Now, another sector that obviously AI impacts is cybersecurity. And with cyber threats evolving faster than ever before, securing the software supply chain has become a top priority for businesses worldwide. Endor Labs is working to tackle these challenges head on, helping developers build secure applications without getting buried in security alerts. To talk more about this is Karl Mattson. He's the Chief Information Security Officer of Endor Labs. Good morning.
Good morning, Trinity.
Now, we understand that you were at the Paris AI Summit this week. What were some of the biggest takeaways for you, and why was it important you were there on the ground?
Well, I think the big takeaways really are come in two areas. First is the U.S. and the U.K. really electing to go solo, breaking off from the rest of the world in terms of global policy. And then the second part of that story is really the EU and China, France in particular, really stepping up to fill that void, announcing $200 billion of new AI infrastructure, really as a competition to the Trump administration's $500 billion Stargate program. So what we're seeing is a bit of an arms race between nations and between sort of camps of organizations that are trying to take advantage of the promise of AI. But there's a lot of this story that remains to be told. And so we need to all participate, from the private sector, the public sector, and the global community.
And you brought up a good point, especially with the new administration now officially in office, President Trump, as you said. How do you see him sitting in this seat impacting the broader cybersecurity sector the rest of the year?
Well, certainly the Stargate program at least indicates a significant focus on infrastructure investment. That investment is going to create opportunities for companies, private, public sector organizations to build on top of that infrastructure over the long haul. However, I think the software developers of the world might roll their eyes a little bit at that, because the open source community and what's happening in the public sphere in AI really is dominating right now. And so despite or in spite of public policy, I still think the majority of advancement in AI and where AI develops over time will be driven in the open source, in spite of what government policy may indicate.
I want to know more about your strategy, right, when it comes to securing, especially when it comes to the supply chain. What sets Endor Labs apart in securing the software supply chain compared to existing solutions that we see currently on the market?
Well, I think it comes back to this focus on open source. Organizations like Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, of course, their investment in their AI infrastructure is significant. But what we see in organizations that are building AI applications, what they're using open source models. And so what we do is we inspect the software during its development and through its life cycle to look at the risks and security controls related to the use of open source models. And so what we see is for the most part, corporations and organizations building on AI will be building on open source. And that's why we put our focus specifically on open source and less so on the private sources like OpenAI and Microsoft.
I do want to dive into that conversation a little bit more. So what's driving this adoption for major companies like you mentioned, OpenAI, VMware, and Peloton even?
Well, we're certainly seeing the driver be productivity enhancement, the co-piloting or the augmentation of employees to make them more productive in their daily tasks. And I think that's probably going to be the case for the next couple of years, where the current workforce can amplify its practices using AI to make it more productive. In the long run, we'll see, of course, agentic AI take on much larger functions, things like optimizing air traffic control networks or optimizing traffic patterns in a metropolitan area. Those are a few years out. So we're still really focused on, or organizations are focused on employee productivity as their main business driver.
Karl, what would you say are the biggest trends that are shaping the future of software supply chain security, at least for the near term?
Well, I think the biggest trend, and what we're really seeing in AI in particular, is that software development is happening everywhere. It's not just happening in an IT shop. It's happening what we call the citizen developer. And so when we look at securing software, we can't rely on what we consider legacy control points or legacy scanners for evaluating software, because software is being generated everywhere now. And so our practice of securing software, where we insert ourselves to inspect or to guide or to test software, those points have to be ubiquitous across an organization, not just in the software development shop.
Karl Mattson, Chief Information Security Officer of Endor Labs. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Trinity.